The Declaration of Independence is one of the most powerful documents in human history. It's only about 1,300 words long, but those words changed the course of the world. They declared that a group of colonies across the Atlantic Ocean would no longer obey one of the most powerful empires on Earth. But this wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a spark that set off a war, a test of ideas written in ink and fought in blood. This is the story of how the United States was born, not just through revolution, but through words that dared to defy a king. Long before the Declaration was signed in 1776, tensions between Britain and its American colonies had been building for years. At first, the colonies were loyal subjects of the British Crown. They traded goods, paid modest taxes, and saw themselves as part of a vast empire. But as time passed, cracks began to appear. Britain's government saw the colonies as a source of wealth, while many colonists began to see themselves as a new kind of people, freer, more independent, and less willing to be ruled from across an ocean. The first big rift came after the French and Indian War, which ended in 1763. Britain had won, but the victory came with enormous debt. To recover the cost, Parliament began taxing the colonies more heavily. They passed laws like the Stamp Act, which required colonists to pay taxes on paper goods, and the Townshend Acts would tax everyday items like tea and glass. These taxes didn't seem fair to the colonists because they had no representatives in Parliament. No taxation without representation became their cry. To them, it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle of freedom. Protests erupted across the colonies. Newspapers mocked British rule, merchants boycotted British goods, and activists like Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry began to speak openly about liberty. In 1770, things turned violent in Boston when British soldiers opened fire on a crowd of angry colonists. 5 people were killed in what became known as the Boston Massacre. The event spread anger like wildfire, convincing many that British rule was turning oppressive. The tension grew worse in 1773 when Parliament passed the Tea Act, giving Britain's East India Company a monopoly on tea sales. In protest, a group of colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded ships in Boston Harbor and dumped the tea into the water. The Boston Tea Party was both daring and defiant, and it enraged the British government. In retaliation, Parliament passed harsh laws known as the Intolerable Acts, which punished Massachusetts by closing Boston's port and placing the colony under direct royal control. By 1774, many colonists believed that peaceful solutions were running out. Representatives from 12 colonies met in Philadelphia to form the First Continental Congress, a historic gathering to decide what to do. They sent petitions to King George III asking for fair treatment, but their pleas were ignored. Instead, the king sent more troops. Then, in April 1775, the first shots of the American Revolution were fired at Lexington and Concord. Nobody knew who pulled the trigger, but the effect was immediate. Open war had begun. Farmers, blacksmiths, and townspeople grabbed their muskets and joined local militias. The colonies were now fighting for their lives against the most powerful army in the world. At first, not everyone wanted independence. Many colonists still thought they could reconcile with Britain. Even George Washington, who took command of the Continental Army, hoped for peace. But as the war dragged on and more British troops landed, attitudes began to shift. The turning point came in early 1776 when a short pamphlet titled Common Sense began circulating across the colonies. It was written by Thomas Paine, an Englishman with a gift for fiery words. In plain, powerful language, Paine argued that it was absurd for a small island like Britain to rule an entire continent. He said kings were nothing but tyrants, and that America's destiny was independence. His words reached every corner of the colonies, inspiring farmers, merchants, and soldiers alike. The cause of America is in great measure the cause of all mankind, Paine wrote. The idea of independence spread like a spark in dry grass, By the summer of 1776, there was no turning back. Delegates from all 13 colonies gathered in Philadelphia for the Second Continental Congress to decide the future of their nation. The question on the table was simple: should they declare independence from Britain? But the answer was anything but simple. Declaring independence meant war, not just with soldiers, but with ideas. It meant challenging the very notion of monarchy and empire. In June 1776, a young delegate from Virginia named Thomas Jefferson was chosen to write the first draft of the Declaration. Jefferson was only 33 years old, but he had a gift for elegant and persuasive writing. For days, he sat in a rented room in Philadelphia, his pen scratching against parchment as he tried to capture the spirit of a new nation. Jefferson drew on Enlightenment ideas, the belief that all people have natural rights and that governments exist to protect those rights. He wrote that all men are created equal and that they are endowed with unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These were radical words. They rejected centuries of kings and aristocrats who claimed power by birthright. Jefferson declared that the people themselves were the source of power. But Jefferson didn't stop at ideals. He also listed Britain's crimes. The Declaration included a long list of grievances against King George III, accusing him of imposing unfair taxes, dissolving colonial governments, maintaining standing armies in peacetime, and ignoring the petitions of his subjects. It painted the king as a tyrant, and it justified rebellion as an act of moral necessity. When Jefferson presented his draft to the Congress, debates erupted. Some delegates wanted to soften the language, others worried about offending allies. Jefferson's words about slavery were removed to keep the Southern colonies united, a painful compromise that would haunt America for generations. But the core message, that freedom is a right, not a privilege, remained untouched. Finally, on July 2, 1776, the Continental Congress voted in favor of independence. 2 days later, on July 4th, they officially adopted Jefferson's declaration. Bells rang in Philadelphia, and people cheered in the streets. But behind the celebration was the knowledge that the hardest part was yet to come. They had declared independence. Now they had to fight for it. The war that followed was brutal. The British Army launched massive assaults, capturing New York City and burning towns along the coast. The Continental Army suffered defeats and shortages. Soldiers went barefoot in winter, hungry and freezing. Yet the spirit of the Declaration kept them going. They were no longer fighting just for survival. They were fighting for a principle: that people could govern themselves, that freedom was worth any sacrifice. George Washington's leadership turned the tide. Victories at Trenton, Princeton, and later at Saratoga showed that the colonists could stand against Britain. In 1778, France joined the war on the American side, turning it into a global conflict. Over the next several years, battles raged across land and sea, from the southern swamps to the Caribbean. In 1781, after 6 long years of bloodshed, the British Army under General Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown, Virginia. The war was effectively over. 2 years later, Britain officially recognized the United States as an independent nation. The words written in Philadelphia became a reality. The Declaration of Independence was more than a break from Britain. It was a statement to the world. It declared that freedom and equality were universal rights, not gifts from rulers. Its ideas inspired revolutions in France, Latin America, and beyond. Yet those same words also revealed contradictions that America would struggle with for centuries. The Declaration said all men are created equal, but slavery still existed. Women, Native Americans, and the poor were excluded from its promises. The revolution had begun, but the journey toward true equality had only started. Over time, the Declaration became more than a founding document. It became a symbol. During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln turned to its words to argue that the nation must live up to its original promise. In the 20th century, civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. echoed Jefferson's words when demanding justice and equality. The power of the Declaration was not just in what it said in 1776, but in how its message continued to evolve. Today, the Declaration of Independence is displayed under glass in Washington, D.C. Its ink faded, but its words eternal. Millions visit each year to see the parchment that began a nation. It's more than a historical relic. It's a reminder of courage, vision, and imperfection. The men who signed it were not perfect heroes, but they dared to imagine something the world had never seen before: a republic built on the idea that all people have rights simply because they are human.